Welcome to the Shrink Show. Hi, friends. Okay, ready?
Filming intros is awkward.
The worst, but we have to do it.
Right. But do you know what isn't awkward? Well, I guess in a way you could say it's awkward, but JD's story, holy moly. It's like a Netflix series. Netflix, if you're listening, which obviously they are because we are amazing, you need to pick up his book and write a series about it because it has twists and turns and what the beep, you know?
You bleeped yourself for once?
I did. I'm growing. I'm evolving.
Evolving.
Yeah, I'm
So we
fucking
have
evolving.
so we have the best guest for you listeners to really truly have not only just grow in knowledge and the perspective of what gaslighting, what abuse looks like, what a narcissistic partner looks like. We
Borderline.
touch on personality disorders. Yes, JD McCabe, who is the author of The Third Gift, My Dance with the Devil and Her Mother. I'm halfway through the book, so if you guys want to quickly catch up and have a fun little book club, you can do that. That would be fun. But listen to this episode and truly just absorb what it is like firsthand in being in an abusive relationship.
I'm gonna let Jamie take the stage now because she's the one who finds everybody and brings everybody in. She's been reading your book and gave me a little rundown.
Sparkling.
And I'm like, what the fuck? I am so interested to hear all of this. So JD, what the hell?
What the hell?
What the hell is right? That's what I should have titled the book. What the hell? Yeah. But
yeah.
Other options.
You're sorry. Yeah.
Well, Jamie, how far into it are you?
You have recently discharged from the hospital, and then you went home, and then I feel like you're starting the medical record swap. So I feel like you're alluding to I'm halfway through. Yeah, you're alluding to
okay.
she's over, she's filing, and yeah.
You're just
so it's not
it's
like a chapter after you discharge from the hospital, because I think I texted Angie, and as we're also social workers, so I was like listen to this bullshit about how the inpatient process works, because I was like, this would never, and I go, is this different from state to state, or is this something that I've literally never heard of? Because I've never heard of how you described what the heck, how the psychiatrist was like, you have to go, and then you cannot be discharged until your outpatient psychiatrist approves of that. And I was like, that sounds so made up. I'm not saying it's made up, but it sounds unbelievable, right?
No, what actually happened there was, yeah. So, I was involuntarily committed by my family practitioner with his back turned to me and said, well, sounds like bipolar. And if you don't go to such and such psychiatric hospital, I'll have you involuntarily committed. So I spent 3 days in I'm in the medical pharmaceutical field. I've been in it a long time. So I knew the hospitals. I went to the dedicated psych hospital. I'm like, no, the lobby was packed. And I'm like, I am not staying here. And I handed my little white piece of paper to the guy behind the glass. And he just looked at me and said, it's an 8 to 10 hour wait. Have a seat. And I'm like, I'm not staying. I'll go to a hospital that I know has a dedicated psych unit. I called the family practitioner on the way there just so, the cops didn't come looking for me. I had the ex-wife. The ex-wife was in the car with me, lovingly was going to support me through it all. And spent 3 days in a psychiatric ER, never saw a psychiatrist. The only mental health social worker I saw was at 12:30 in the morning upon my intake into the ER, and I asked every day to see a psychiatrist, and I never saw one. Third day, the cops show up, and I'm like, what are you guys doing here? They said, we're here to transport you to such and such psychiatric hospital. I'm like, oh, well, that's the place I've been trying to avoid, but okay. So I spent 6 days there. So the inpatient psychiatrist, who had a bustling outpatient practice, he also came there several days a week, and they would roll out the carts with the charts, and we'd get 5 or 10 minutes with him and his assistant. I'm sure he was making money hand over fist. I saw my assigned social worker for about 45 seconds over the course of 6 days. I asked to set up an appointment with her to talk about the discharge process and just to connect with her a little bit. And this was at the nurse's station. And she looked at me and said, well, have you been involuntarily committed? I said, yeah. She said, you're going to need to talk to your doctor. There's no reason for us to meet. I'm like, okay. So go ahead. But I'll finish this up. So the inpatient guy spoke in the pharmaceutical industry. He happened to speak for a company I used to work for regarding an antidepressant. Sure enough, everybody in that place was on that antidepressant. He was all chummy and, all was great till the weekend came, and there was another psychiatrist there covering weekends, and my daughter's 16th birthday was going to be Sunday, and I was asking him any chance that I could be discharged. And he said, I've already talked to your psychiatrist, your inpatient psychiatrist, about your inappropriate admission. But he said he wants to see you on Monday. So I'm like, all right, I'm not getting out of here. I'm going to miss her 16th birthday. And when he came in, when I saw him Monday, he was pissed. He was no longer friendly. And he attacked me and said, I know what people like you are in your industry. You're in sales, you're manipulators, you're spinners. And I explained to him, all I was trying to do was be home for my daughter's 16th birthday. And he said, I'm going to discharge you tomorrow, but all of this is legally binding and da. I didn't even care what he meant by that. I'm like, all right, I just need to get the hell out of here. So that was the story there. It had nothing to do with the outpatient psychiatrist, but I did have an outpatient psychiatrist who I met with about 6 days before my involuntary commitment, and he misdiagnosed me with bipolar 2 based on, input from my wife at the time and filling out subjective BS questionnaires that she checked every little box on it. So that was just the beginning of the journey. So getting out of there, I thought when I was in there, I thought, man, I've hit rock bottom. This is it. She was classic. I'm sure you guys are experts in borderline and gaslighting and projection and everything that I had no knowledge of. But, she'd write me the sweetest letter I ever received while I was in there. And then the abuse would begin 2 minutes after I was discharged from the psychiatric hospital on the drive home. And like I said, that's just the beginning of it. And then it was, a year later, after we had separated, that I would discover the arsenic poisoning, and then the domestic violence trial, and then the 4-day alimony trial, and just all of the other madness in between. So you're just getting into the meat of the book. You haven't even gotten to the chapter yet where she accused me of giving her herpes, have you?
No, I think that's what she was doing. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's chapter. That's
getting
chapter
tested
10.
back and forth. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, maybe you're beyond that. Angie, you've got a question or two or three.
Well, no,
Angie has questions.
There's always so many thoughts going on, but I do want to consider our listeners, because they're probably listening and they're probably like, what the fuck is happening? And like, what is this even about? And obviously we will have an intro that will kind of provide this, but I really love, like, this feels like, that first episode where people are like, what is
happened?
this? And they want to listen to more. So I do feel like there has to be a bit of a backstory of where the fuck, like everything that happened that got you to that moment of feeling like you're crazy and everybody telling you you're crazy.
Yeah. So let me reset that a little bit then. So the craziest part of this whole journey, and I dedicated one chapter to it, but is that we were stable and happily as I knew it then, right? So my perception clearly has changed, but happily married for 17 years. And then the wheels started coming off. These subtle accusations of infidelity and drug addiction, that I was addicted to drugs and I was cheating on her. And the other backstory to it is her father came out of the closet when he was 2. Her parents divorced. She maintained a very good relationship with her father up until the time that her first marriage, brief marriage, allegedly, according to her, she was only married 8 weeks, didn't move in with him, was looking for a father figure. He was 11 years older than her. And of course, I didn't peel that red flag back nearly enough. But her mother and her grandmother supported it and kind of put my mind at ease that, she's estranged from her father, didn't have a father figure in her life. But as it turns out, and I think this is where the abandonment piece feeds into borderline potentially. But she wasn't estranged. She wasn't estranged from him she was estranged when we started dating, but she wasn't estranged again until after he took in her first husband. And I would say to her, man, that's awful that your father would do that to you. And she said, of course, she'd be like, well, I told you he's gay. He was attracted to him. And once
Wait,
all
hold on.
craziness.
So were they in a relationship?
No. She alleged that. She alleged that, my father took him in because he's attracted to him. After madness happened and after we separated and I started cross-checking and digging into everything, I looked up records down in Florida where her father lived and confirmed that, her ex-husband was on the deed to the home and was living with her father and his life partner. And there was another woman living in the home. I had no idea who the woman was, but I did confirm that he lived there for, a year to 2 years. But they were not estranged until again, he took him in. But her telling me that only further cemented what I had heard from her mother and what I heard. She had a brother, but she wasn't close to her brother. I didn't talk to her brother all that often. But it only further cemented for me that, the bastard that she painted her father out to be, I felt sympathy for her, like, wow, you've been through it, So I didn't dig any deeper into that. But I think the tipping point, to answer your question, Angie, as to when things went nuts, they reconnected for 5 years through the innocence of my son. He was 5 or 6 at the time, and they knew about Grandpa. They never met him, but he simply said, Mommy, why don't you call him? And she did, and they reconnected, and they had what I would describe as a superficial relationship for 5 years. And I would say to her, I'll support you reconnect, and I just don't, listen to me now, I just don't want you to get hurt again. But of course, now I see her father, rest his soul, in a different light. But they reconnected for 5 years. I said, have you guys ever talked? Has he ever apologized? And she's like, no, we're just kind of keeping it high level. And I kicked myself for a lot of things. I should have asked him on the occasions we got together, hey, what the hell happened? But I never did. And so he had a massive heart attack. She had to make the difficult decision to take him off life support. And then 2 years after that, or thereabouts, his life partner of 23 years passed away. And then she went off the deep end. And I would only discover that after her accusations and after I started digging into medical claims and pharmacy claims, and I discovered her hidden prescription drug addiction. So that connected very nicely to the time frame that her father's life partner passed away as well. So I chalk it up to guilt being a very toxic emotion. And she missed 10 years of her father's life. And I'm certain now that she probably cheated on her first husband or did whatever. But I got the same story that she would turn on me 20 years later or whatever it was, that he was controlling, he was abusive, he was jealous, and when I first met her, and you can't have any regrets in life, right? I've got 2 beautiful kids out of it. But when I first met her, I was young. She was young. She was 22. I was 25-ish. And I found out, she informed me that she had been married. And in my gut, I'm like, I don't want to mess with that. I'm not going to mess with that right now. Maybe it's judgmental. Maybe it's naive for my age. But so she gave me her number. I didn't call her. I ran into her in a bar outside of Pittsburgh about 3 months later. And as they say, the rest is history. But I think her father's death is intimately involved with why the demons finally came out, because I could never understand from, and maybe you guys can tell me, but she truly kept this stuff tucked away, or perhaps I just didn't see it because, I was busy building my career. We were busy raising 2 young kids. We moved a fair amount from Kentucky to North Carolina, and in North Carolina is when all of this, went haywire. But I mean, that's the backdrop, really.
How old was she when her father died?
That's a great question. Hang on, let me do the math. She would have been 39.
And how old is she now?
Well, now she's 55, but yeah, and I haven't talked to her in over 5 years, and my kids don't have a relationship with her. They're young adults now. They haven't seen her in 4 years, and they had to make the difficult decision to just remove that toxicity from their lives. After I was out of the picture, she first started attacking my son, verbally, and assaulting him via text and emails and letters and stuff. And then she would come at my daughter. So
see, quick, that kind of answers. So the thought I had was that the passing of her dad didn't make the demons come out. He's the one who got the demons.
Mm-hmm.
Then he went away and it moved to you, because then when you went away, it went to your son.
Yeah.
So it's just changing.
It's always been there. You just didn't.
It's been there.
Yeah.
You were.
That's interesting. I've never heard. That's why I was so looking forward to getting the therapy perspective on this. But well, yeah. But then, so when she reconnected with her father, then how do you explain that? She did that just for the benefit of my kids?
No, because then she could demonize him. Like, again, she could continue to.
Him as the SOB.
Knowing what I know about what she did to you, I'm like, did he naturally have a heart attack, or and made the hard decision to take him off life support? I mean, I'm just saying, based on your experience, I'm a little skeptical.
Damn,
I don't know anything about her. I don't know anything
We're
about
just asking questions, JD. That's it.
I just have so many fucking questions, and
this is great. This is great perspective. I might need to pour a gin here in a little bit, but this is tremendous. Seriously, this is tremendous perspective, because, when it transpired, we lived in North Carolina. She lived in when he had his massive heart attack. I remember the phone call from his life partner, but yeah, I wasn't there at the hospital. Who's to say? To add a little fuel to the fire. Let me add a little more fuel to that fire.
Ooh.
So the subtitle of the book is My Dance with the Devil and Her Mother. So her mother turned on me like a cobra. And if you read just the back jacket of the book, you will see where she threatened to kill me on a beach trip and suggested I was addicted to porn and I was addicted to drugs and so forth, so on. But her mother passed away in 2018. She moved in, her and her mother moved with her. They made their way down to Florida even before we were done legally. She didn't go to my daughter's high school graduation. She didn't go to my daughter's college graduation. Those were all blessings as I see it now. But in 2018, through my kids, because my kids were still communicating a little bit with her, I was not communicating with her. We found out that allegedly grandma was diagnosed, thought she had pneumonia, whatever, went into the hospital, was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, made the decision that, I'm not going to get any chemo. She came home on a Monday. She was dead on a Thursday. She was cremated the following Monday. Now, that's not in the book, because that transpired after the book was written and done. So you might be onto something. I wasn't with her at the hospital when she was with her dad in Florida.
I'm just saying, psychopaths, sociopaths, like there's a reason why they always say, "Oh, he was such a nice guy," like because they're good at playing the game.
Oh, she was brilliant.
Yeah, and there's a fine line. So my story, my mom has schizophrenia and bipolar, and my uncle has paranoid schizophrenia, and they are both geniuses. And my uncle Rex is always like, "You got to learn how to play the game, Angie. You got to learn how to play the game. It's all about the game." And The mind
Mhm.
game is the most fucked up of them all. Like I've always said, if I were to interact with anyone like your ex-wife who wanted to convince anyone that I am crazy, I'm fucked, because I've got so much crazy in my family that you could easily be like, dude, homegirl over here thinks she's a Pleiadian starseed and that she can shamanically talk to her spirit guides and guardian angels, and they'd be like, okay, lock her up, like immediately. So I don't know. I don't trust anything. I don't think it could have been. I don't think you can say it's isolated to you, because this isn't something that just came out of nothing.
Right.
Mhm.
Man, this is brilliant. This is brilliant insight. And you've got my wheels turning here. Because her story, and this is why the title of the book is The Third Gift. It really is. First two gifts are my kids. But that third gift was that herpes accusation, because it gave me emotional freedom, stability, and I began to uncover everything that she was doing and then she had done. Had she never made that accusation, I would never have looked. I would never have spent hours combing through medical claims and pharmacy claims. I wouldn't have discovered the hidden prescription drug addiction to 3 different formulations of amphetamines, benzos, mood stabilizers, 4,800 milligrams of Neurontin. I don't know how she's still alive today, but her story, to your point, Angie, her story was coming together beautifully. I spent 9 days in a psych facility. She was already telling family and friends, that he's crazy. He's got a mood disorder, so forth, so on. And her story was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say I tested positive for the herpes, or she never played that card. I don't know where I'd be with my kids today. I don't know where I'd be emotionally. I might not be here. I might have taken my own life. And I mean, I was pushed to the brink, not when I was in the psychiatric facility, but I didn't have suicidal ideations when I got committed. Some people think perhaps she was sleeping with the family practitioner because he's the one that committed me. And then I would later discover he was also the one that allowed her to fill amphetamines in our kids' names, because her neurologist, he was a legit doctor, was being watched by the DEA and the North Carolina Medical Board for inappropriate prescribing of narcotics. And I only discovered all this stuff after we separated, and I started digging into everything. So,
I mean, if you look at, so I was talking to somebody today about sexual abuse perpetrators, right? They know, they know exactly who to look for.
yeah.
They know how to find the victim who has been perpetrated on before, and to use that to their advantage so they can continue to perpetuate their need for sexual abuse. Similarly, your ex-wife, it's possible she just knew which doctor was going to give her exactly what she wanted. She knew which doctor she could play because he didn't give a shit, or he was too tired, or she's that convincing to say, my kids have ADHD, my husband has mood disorders. Because I think about this as the daughter of someone who has schizophrenia and bipolar. I would get so frustrated when people wouldn't listen to me, because I knew her. I knew when she was going off the deep end, and yet I couldn't convince people to help me get her back regulated. And so it'd be like, oh, just listen to me. She's unhealthy. She's not taking her meds. She's going to hurt somebody. Flip it over and act like she's not the crazy one. And I am.
Yep. Yeah. And she bounced. Well, this is your mother, you're saying?
Yeah.
Is she stable?
Yeah. She's actually
stable
been,
today.
I'm her guardian and conservator, and she's been stable and out of the hospital for 11 years. She's a wonderful grandma. Like, she's doing so well, and it warms my heart. Because I
awesome.
actually want her to be healthy. I don't want to murder her.
Well, and here's the thing too. And so with our broken mental health system, broken medical system, or whatever, she could just bounce and bounce and bounce to whoever and tell them she had an autoimmune disease. So that's the thing that started popping up. Maybe it adds a little more to your analysis. Early in our marriage, maybe about 7-8 years in our marriage, she started complaining of whatever, and allegedly was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder. In the book, I changed it to fibromyalgia just for, it has nothing to do with legality, but the publisher's like, we got to change a few things up here if you want to get this book published. So I changed names and locations and a few things, but the rest is very real and raw. And, I never asked to see her medical records, never did anything. So she would begin playing this victim card that she has an autoimmune disease. And the whole time, I had no idea it was the medications. Once I discovered the medications, I'm like, all of her cardiac issues make sense. But we would go to cardiologist after cardiologist. She'd put herself and us through tilt table tests, not benign cardiac procedures, but never told anybody, hey, I'm taking Adderall XR and Ritalin LA. Never told anybody that, but yet enjoyed the attention of being sick. And so that was the card that they would carry into the courtroom, is that she's just so sick and will never be able to work full time and blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. So some think, and I'd love your insight on this, some think, I guess it's called factitious disorder now, but some think maybe she has Munchausen's.
Oh my God. Okay. I wish I could show you my fucking screen. I literally just Googled Munchausen's because I was like, that feels like Munchausen's. Mm-hmm. I literally have it on my screen right now.
And then,
the arsenic.
The arsenic poisoning by proxy. So she was poisoning me, but yet she would come to me and say, we're going to figure this out. We're going to figure out this weight loss. And then she'd get pissed. I mean, I used to go 250, 255. In the book, I was very generous, Jamie, if you've gotten there. I said 225, but I was much heavier than that. I just didn't even know until family members started showing me pictures after the fact. I'm like, geez, I was a big old boy. But the wedding ring wouldn't fit, so I'm out doing yard work one day and I lost it in the Bermuda grass and she went nuts. Why aren't you wearing your wedding ring? And I found it, thank God, so I could later sell it. But holy cow, man, you've given me some insight that I've never even thought about.
Well, and that Munchausen, you shared in your book how she was, she would immediately tell everybody whatever your new diagnosis was, whatever new medication changes you had, anytime that you were in and out of the house. So, I mean, it really, that's that attention seeking of, keeping people posted on any little change and, oh, sad, oh my gosh, that's terrible. Yeah. So absolutely it fits.
Wow. Yeah.
She's
so I mean,
really mentally ill and is able to pretend that she isn't. I just Googled
let me ask you this. This is, you're on my podcast now. I know. Because I love this insight. I put it out there on TikTok and other places, but some say that borderline and that kind of stuff is not a mental illness. It's a mental disorder. It's a learned behavior. What are your thoughts?
I'm going to let Jamie answer this one. I have my own thoughts, but Jamie deals with adults more than I do.
Okay. Is it a learned behavior?
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, it's not a learned behavior. It is a diagnosable mental illness, right? It's in the DSM. You have to be diagnosed. There are screenings, right? There are ways in which it's diagnosed, just like bipolar, just like major depressive disorder. I think it gets confused by the general public because it comes off as a learned behavior because typically you are the product of some level of childhood abuse or trauma, neglect, etc. And personality disorders tend to come out when people, they've figured out how to survive, quote unquote, that level of abuse or neglect or violence that they're being exposed to. And they continue that same social interaction, that mindset in adult relationships when they're no longer in that abusive relationship. So I think sometimes it comes off as it's a learned behavior, but it is not. It's still the trend still comes from abuse and trauma and neglect. But there are people and there is research that shows it still is genetically in the family, not 100% of the time, but you've alluded to, just in the title of your book, some of this, like her mom has demonstrated some borderline behaviors in the book that I've read. I'm assuming there are probably other interactions that the two of you have had that weren't even in the book. So it more than likely is something that goes in her family. So
I was
like
gonna
maybe
say
aunts, maybe other family members.
I was going to say her anger with her dad. This is my, and again, I have nothing to base this on. So not a diagnosis, but if I were to guess, I would say her mom also has borderline. Her anger with her dad is not in the fact that he was gay and left the house, it was in the fact that he left the house. So she was left alone with her mother, having to, at a young age, navigate that borderline personality. Ooh. Because then she became the issue. From a really young age, I learned how to navigate interactions with my mom, because who knew what mom I was going to get from one day to the next. One day I'm her angel, the next day I'm the devil, and it didn't matter what I did or didn't do. So I had to learn how to survive within that. The difference with that is my mother had a diagnosable mental illness, so I could separate, where I think with borderline, it's so rarely diagnosed. And with borderline personality, the reality of having consistent relationships, if you are somebody who has borderline, is very low. So let's say I'm a child within that household. My parent or caregiver who has that diagnosis, whether it's official or not, bounces from relationship to relationship to relationship. So where's the consistency in anyone being able to see me to protect me? So then I am even more so left with survival after survival after survival. I don't know anything about her childhood, but
she didn't get into much detail. My ex-wife, and everything. I can't believe anything she said. So when something pops in my head, but when you mentioned that, and I've often thought about that, it's like I don't know much about her mother or her mother's past after she was separated or whatever. But her daughter would tell me that her mom used to operate kind of a swinging door, if you will, with guys coming in and out of the house. Mm-hmm. Again, I don't know if that's factual or not, but I do know her own mother, rest her soul, would always tell me, as you know, I'm not very close with my mom. She would say that about her relationship with her mother. But I never asked her, well, why is that? I never asked. So you've uncovered some interesting things here tonight.
Does your ex-wife have any close friendships?
As I think back through the marriage or whatever she did, there was, and it's not in the book. The book could have been 600 pages. But there was one instance where we were outside doing some yard work, and she stood at the top of the driveway, and it's a rare sign of seeing emotion from her that she was crying. And I said, what's wrong? She said, I don't have any friends.
Yeah. Okay. That's for anybody listening. Unfortunately, that is a significant sign of somebody who might struggle.
Or I will see females will have only male friends, and they'll insist, I'm only friends with boys. Like I just don't make girlfriends. And truly, realistically, especially as adults and married adults, it is very unrealistic that opposite sex are best friends or close friends. Right. There's especially if it's many men and one woman.
Yeah.
It's also unrealistic as a mother and as a wife to have zero girlfriends.
Right.
Like zero, unless you move around a lot. And I don't want to imply that everybody who doesn't have friends, that's what's going on, because that isn't the case. It is a case by case. But if you have resided in the same area for a while,
there's other check boxes, but this is a big check box. Or you don't have long lasting friends. Like, I don't talk to this person anymore. And there's not a concrete reason why. Like, a boundary was crossed necessarily. Like that, there would be a clear reason. But it's more like, oh, I don't like them anymore. They just think they're too good for me, you know? So it's usually something negative. It's usually like the other person's fault, or just, again, a lot of short spurt relationships, if they
And
are.
one thing, when things started unraveling a little bit, and I would question her about a woman in the neighborhood, she would get angry, and she would go, that's my friend. That's my friend. But it was this friend who we never figured out. It was my financial advisor's wife. He had been our financial advisor for 17 years or whatever it was. And they were never, as far as I knew, my now ex-wife and her never hung out, never did anything, but there was something shady going on in the neighborhood. Because as you will read in the book with the private eye work, the private eyes thought they had identified the guy she was running around with, because she had pretty much contracted every STD out there, in addition to the herpes accusation. And it goes back to borderline and promiscuity and the need to feel attached or connected. But yeah, she had pretty much contracted everyone out there, every STD out there, based on my analysis of antibiotic prescriptions and other prescriptions for, the female areas. But yeah, I mean, so it turns out we thought they identified the guy. I test negative. We drop our negative bomb on them a month later and I thought it was over. Like, okay, we're done here. I'm negative. You got it. And then we told them through the mediator, hey, we've identified your boyfriend. And they said, give us the number. And we gave them the number. And of course, we're sitting in two separate rooms, and there's an attorney going back and forth. And the mediator, an attorney, comes in playing a voicemail from my financial advisor's wife. And I'm like, what the fuck? I said, so I'm like, I need to call my private eye. I immediately get on the phone and I curse him out. And I said, look, you made me crazier than the other side already thinks that I am. Now they think I'm really off the rails crazy, because it was my financial advisor's wife. So I call my financial advisor and I say, hey man, I don't know how to ask you this. I need you to, I said, how long is Susie? We'll call her Susie. In the book, I call her Crystal. I gave them all stripper names. But I said, how long has Crystal had this phone? He's like, Crystal's had that phone about 10 years. I'm like, okay. And then he says to me, he says, oh, by the way, what is your private eye's name and number? And I said, why do you ask? He said, well, I think she's been running around on me for 4 or 5 years, and I want to have a conversation with them. But I would later discover that for some reason, my now ex-wife's name, we subpoenaed everything. That's why I spent what I spent, which is a crazy amount of money. But so my retirement's gone. But anyhow, I felt the need to do it. But yeah, so we were subpoenaing records, and we find out that my now ex-wife's name is attached to their Time Warner Cable home phone bill dating back to 2011. And I'm like, why the hell would her name be on their home phone bill? And we never figured it out, that the cable companies wanted a court order and all this stuff. And at that point, I was bleeding money, and we had a positive herpes test on her part. We had destruction of evidence on her part because she destroyed phones and destroyed computers in spite of a court order. So we had solid evidence. We had her own OBGYN that would testify on our behalf as to what he saw. We had an STD expert that we retained who wrote the CDC guidelines for STD treatment. He was the lead author on it. So he would testify as to the fact that she's got it and she didn't get it from me, either one. So we had solid evidence. That's why I'm like, I can't pursue this cable thing, So it was so much. There was so much, and there's so many twists and turns, and that's why one of the reasons why I wrote the book, because it was a 4 or 5 year journey, and friends and family and a lot of people got sucked into it. And that's the reason why I wrote it under a pseudonym and changed a few things just to protect the privacy of everybody involved. But yeah, they call me and they go, anything crazy happened now? And I'm like, yeah, you're never going to believe what I discovered. I discovered she's been using my kids to fill prescriptions. Oh, I discovered that, the private eye work was terrible. The only good news about the private investigator deal was that I'm like, you're going to refund me for all your phone work. So, I mean, I ended up getting $4,000 back from them, which immediately went to the attorneys. But I'm like, I'm not paying you for this. And allegedly, these were former FBI guys out of New York, and their phone surveillance and their records, it just never failed. It's never happened. I'm like, well, it happened. So we never identified who all she was running around with, men, women, how many, whatever. But
So she basically, through, you said 17 years you guys were together?
yeah.
So over 17 years.
Well, on paper, 17 years stability, and then the madness happened.
Oh, yes. Okay. So 17 years stability. Over that
on
time.
paper, we were together 22, 23 years. Yeah.
Over that time, she poisoned you with arsenic,
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, wrong word. She convinced medical professionals that you were like severely mentally ill to the point that you were involuntarily hospitalized in a psych unit and given medication.
Yeah.
She convinced doctors that her children had ADHD, obviously, right? Because she had all this Adderall, all these amphetamines. She convinced doctors that she has an autoimmune disorder and needed a bunch of medications. She convinced you that she was a victim with her dad. She convinced medical people to take her dad off life support. I mean, there's like, what am I missing? What else did she do?
Well, there's a lot in that 17 years that I'm not sure what she was doing. I often think back on that. What the hell was she doing for the first 17
yeah,
years?
she cheated on you and basically got us herpelitis. And luckily you were spared, thank God, because you were.
Thank God she took her antibiotics. Yeah.
Right. Well, you were also inpatient, so obviously you couldn't be exposed to her.
No, but she got all this dating back to 2010. I had mapped it all out that she had pretty much been running around on me the last 4 or 5 years of our marriage. And the only reason she played this herpes card, which I'm forever grateful to her, and that's part of the reason why I got to forgiveness real quick, because I'm like, wow, you've handed me the truth. You've given me a new lease on life. You've given me emotional freedom. I thank you for that. And I'm alive, and I still have a wonderful relationship with both of my kids. But the only reason she played that card is she was certain she had infected me. Because 3 weeks before I was manipulated out of my house, her using my daughter as a weapon, who was 15, 16 at the time, we had been together 3 nights in a row, in spite of not being together for 4 months. Again, that mixed emotions of, okay, we're going to work this out. She still loves me, the pull you in so I can punch you in the face again. Yeah.
How?
So then, JD, speaking, because reading your book, this is what it made me wonder, is because of your, all like the stories we've talked about just here on the podcast, clearly there's many more details in your book. What have you learned about being the victim of emotional and mental abuse and gaslighting? Meaning, how can listeners learn from this, knowing your experience? And because a lot of these stories are like hindsight. Oh yeah, this was bullshit. Oh yeah, I should have known this. That gave me that weird feeling, but what is it like truly to think back on like that younger self of yours and be like, dang, I wish, I would have said this. I wish someone would have said this, What can people take from this? What have you learned?
I've learned a ton, but so as I think back on it, Angie, you had mentioned something about the sexual offenders. They know how to pick their victims. One of the things I learned about myself through therapy, and if the therapy is wonderful if you find the right one, and I was blessed to have the right one. But I had, not to get off track, but her therapist, who was completely bamboozled by her, testified twice against me at my domestic violence trial, and then she begrudgingly was ordered by a judge to testify at our alimony trial too. Again, painting a picture. I was controlling, I was abusive. She feared for her life and the safety of her patient, not her life, but her patient. I met this woman once for 45 minutes, whatever. Anyhow, I digress. What I've learned is this. So through therapy, I come from a family of 9. I'm the middle child of 9. I'm an empath. I'm a pleaser. I was an easy target. And the other thing that I missed, and it's the other thing that I would say to your listeners, if you feel something in your gut, pursue it. Pursue it. It never lies. But I didn't know when she had gotten married the first time. I don't even think I asked. Dumb idiot me. I don't think I even asked. But at the time we were dating, she was dating also casually. We were just dating casually. She was dating 2 other guys. And I remember thinking, oh, how lucky I am that she chose me. Well, she picked her target. She picked somebody with a decent job and whatever the case may be. And
Or
so,
you stayed around and the other 2 left.
Yeah, we got serious and then engaged a year and a half later. So the other thing I think that's really important to share with the audience is a couple of things. I made a huge mistake by isolating myself. I come from a large family, have a large professional network, have a decent network of friends. And I told nobody what was going on. I allowed myself to be on an island. My son was away at college. I was in my own home feeling like on an island. The alienation from my daughter had already begun. So she started drifting from me. And so I felt all alone, but I told nobody what was going on. Part of it was because being in the medical and pharmaceutical industry, knowledge is power, but also knowledge can be dangerous. I started thinking a lot of the stuff I was seeing was due to her autoimmune disease, the cognitive impairment, the delusions, the paranoia. And I had access to networks of neurologists and stuff that I could talk to privately. And they're like, oh, yeah, autoimmune diseases, they can attack every organ in your body. And that could be what it's from. But don't isolate yourself. Find somebody that can provide you with an objective voice.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That really is huge because, I mean, like Jamie and I can't even tell you how many times we call upon each other and are just like, oh, am I, well, Jamie calls me just to prove that she's right. So,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know. Maybe, Jamie, do you have borderline?
No, that would be narcissistic personality disorder.
Oh, you're right. You're
that's
Are
right.
you
borderline
gaslighting
counterpart.
Angie? Are you
Yeah.
gaslighting Angie? Yeah.
No, but you're right because you do have to have someone to talk to. And I do find often with healers, natural healers and empaths, we want to assume the best in others, right?
Yep.
Especially your partner. It's also really hard to admit that perhaps your partner isn't who you thought that they were, because what does that say about you?
Right.
Because you chose them. And I'm not
Right.
saying anything negative in your case. It's just, this is something that goes through your mind. And then also being a big family and being male. I mean, you had so many things kind of against you from the get-go that does make it easy for you to isolate. Women are, I hate to say this, but I mean, if we really want to turn up the heat, we're good at playing the victim.
Yep.
If we really want to.
Yep. Yeah. And so I would say that, but you know, I remember driving to the, I would also say this to any of you young men or women out there. Don't put a time frame on the need to get married, and don't get married and don't be in a relationship if you are not happy with yourself.
Amen.
Nobody is responsible for your happiness or your emotional well-being but you.
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
Yeah, I would say to the young men and women out there, do not get married and do not be involved in a relationship if you are not happy with yourself. Nobody else is responsible for your happiness or your emotional well-being but you. Somebody certainly can make you happier, but that's it. And I remember I was happy with myself. So as I reflect back on that, when I'm driving to the chapel to marry her, I was happy with myself. Okay. That wasn't an issue for me. But the issue for me was, I'm like, hey, you're 20, you're 28. Everybody else around you married. It's probably the right thing to do. No, in my gut, I'm like, I don't want to do this. I do not want to do this. Yeah.
Wow.
So I don't know that I was in love with her at the time, but I fell in love with who I thought she became. You know, she was a decent mother. I'm not going to discount her, but I want to entirely discount her. But But she was a good mother for 17 years. And so I don't know, whatever, maybe there's a lot of other shit that I didn't even know about. So I would say, again, just please do not isolate yourself. Use an objective voice. The other thing I will say, if you see something that's concerning to you with a friend, a family member, a loved one, someone you care about, you have the right to confidentially say to them, look, this is concerning to me, about him or about her. People didn't come to me until after the fact. And they're like, yeah, we always thought there was something off with her. We could always see the pill look in her eyes. She always looked like she was pilled up. And I'm like, why the hell did you say something to me? So
people don't talk.
Yeah, it's not a TSA announcement, but if you see something, say something.
You're right, because I just had this conversation last night with somebody about why are we so afraid to have difficult conversations? We pretend it's because we don't want to upset the other person. Bullshit. It's because you don't want to be put in an uncomfortable situation. I don't want to say to you, hey, I'm worried that your wife's doing drugs, and have you get upset with me. Okay, but what if that saves your life? What if it saves her life, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's so much more to the picture that we just got to put ourselves out there. I want to say really quick, JD, I don't know, and I know you've done therapy. I don't know if you're still in, but I just want to point out the gift, because it sounds like your ex-wife tends to focus really on one person hardcore. And you gave such a gift to your children by being that person. And I know that sucks, and that was hard for you, and you experienced intense pain and turmoil. But when you can say that she was a decent mom, it was because you were there, because you were the focus. It's kind of like, like I
He's the
went and
scapegoat.
Yeah, I went and cleaned my mom's house one time with a friend of mine, and my mom she was not there, and she was in her staring, calling, everybody the devil, and she was staring at my friend, and it was making my friend very uncomfortable. So then I could snap my fingers and be like, Mom, Mom, Mom. And so then my mom could put that focus on me and stare at me, and it protected my friend. My friend was still uncomfortable, but not in the way that she was before that. And that's what you really provided. So I just want to stop and pause for a moment, and I want you to really give yourself that props, because that's huge. Because your kids needed that protection, because your ex-wife didn't, I assume, again, this is based on my assumption, she didn't get that protection in her childhood.
Yeah. And I look back at things and I don't have, unfortunately, I have very few memories from their childhood, meaning artwork and kid stuff, because she wouldn't give me any of it. And allegedly all of it has now been destroyed by black mold. That was as of 3-4 years ago when my kids were still chatting with her. But I did have a Christmas video when my kids were really young. And this was in 2001. This was 8 years into our marriage. And we had a little neighborhood Christmas party, and a neighbor dressed up like Santa, and the kids got to sit on it. My kids were 2.5 and 5. I will cherish this video forever. But the one thing I picked up on, they were sitting on my lap, and she's off in the back in the kitchen. And as I watched, even when she did sit down to open a few gifts with my daughter and whatever, I didn't see the warmth, so yeah, you've raised some very, very valid points.
Mm-hmm. Kids know. Kids intuitively know who is safe and who isn't.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why if children don't want to give someone a hug, or they don't want to have somebody babysit, or don't want to go somewhere, you listen. It's not them trying to be defiant. Kids just fucking know, and they actually communicate exactly what it is that they want. The fact that they were on your lap just tells me that you were safe. And the fact that they are now in your life and not hers, again, just reaffirms that you are the safe one. How are your children doing, by the way? Because has to be fucking like, what the shit? Because at least for me, I knew my mom had a diagnosable mental illness. I knew when she would call me the devil's daughter and psycho bitch, I knew why as I grew up. And so it made it easier, not easy, but easier to confront it. But if I didn't have that, it's so easy as a child to put it on yourself.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they're doing great. They're, you know, they my daughter endured her entire high school years with this, and my son pretty much his college. I was glad that he was isolated and insulated from a lot of it from a distance. She still reached out to do what she could to alienate him from me. As I mentioned, I may have already previously mentioned, I lost my daughter for 2 years. It's one of my favorite chapters in the book when you get to it, Jamie. It's titled Hi, Daddy, when she came back into my life. So there are letters in there that she wrote to me when she went off to college, and there are letters in there that both of my kids have written to me. And they're framed and hanging up in my bedroom. But they're doing great. My daughter still struggles with it a little bit. She's still in therapy periodically, every couple of months, because she's gone through a lot of milestones where mom hasn't been there.
Yeah.
High school graduation, college graduation. She just got engaged. She's going to get married in May. She's had a lot of support from a lot of wonderful women, including some of my sister-in-laws that have stepped up to fill that role. But yeah, so there's a void, but she's growing through it. And I didn't write the book. I want to be clear about this too. I didn't write the book until I had consent from my kids, and I had their blessing to write it. Now, there are some days my daughter's like, Dad, I wish you stop talking about this stuff. But I'm promoting the book to support a couple of nonprofit organizations and to do some good and to give back to others. But they both read it. And when they both read it, the first thing my daughter said was, Dad, why did you have to put the sex stuff in there? That was one thing. And I said I needed to for context, because the being together, it wasn't graphic, but being together 3 nights in a row, 3 weeks prior to getting kicked out of the house, and then her discovering she's got herpes. I mean, again, she was certain she had infected me. And it's really God intervening for sure to say, all right, dumb young man, your marriage is over. I'm going to smack you across the face. Your marriage is over. But they're like, you've sheltered us from so much. And that would be the other advice that I would give to anybody who's going through difficulty that listens to your program that has kids involved. Just know that they're resilient. Some of the best advice my therapist ever gave me is your kids are resilient, but as you go, they will go. Be strong for their sake. Have your weak moments or whatever in private and stay on the high road. The high road can be cold and lonely at times, but I stayed on the high road. I didn't attack their mother. When my character was being assassinated and I was sitting on negative test results, I didn't go to my kids, not for legal reasons. There was nothing legally preventing me from doing so, but I didn't go and tell them, hey, I don't have it. Here you go. Here's the proof. I kept my mouth shut. I ripped my tongue out. And it was hard to watch, my daughter and what she was going through and to have your character assassinated,
Well, I wonder if it helped them see your perspective too, like your side of, oh, this is what actually happened in that argument, or not what maybe necessarily what actually happened, but there's 2 sides to every argument. So like your daughter was in the house the majority of the time. Yeah.
And it allows the children to formulate their own opinions. I get very upset because, and I recognize looking back why this was the decision, but there was the decision made to not have my dad in my life. So I'm very passionate about, we shouldn't make that decision for children. Allow them, if this person is not safe, then you create the steps that allow them to still have that relationship, but you don't make that decision for them. You allow them to make that decision, because I was then robbed of that relationship. Whereas with my mom was very unsafe, but that relationship helped form me into who I am today and helped put me on a career path and give me passion for what I do. So, you know, you win some, you
Yeah.
lose some.
And and again, I thank God for so many things, but one of them is that the kids were older. They
Mhm.
weren't 8, 9, and 10, and she was old enough to see for herself. She witnessed mom in a drug withdrawal, and I only know that from a distance. But I also know it because I was watching her medical and pharmacy claims, and I'm like, this is going to happen. She had gotten off the meds abruptly, Adderall, clonazepam, gotten off them abruptly because she needed to find a part-time job. So I'm like, she's going to have to pass a drug screen. And so my daughter came home from high school when she was living with her. We were separated, and mom couldn't walk, mom couldn't talk. There was dog food all over the floor. And her friends had been leaning on her to say, hey, you need to call your dad. You need to reach out to your dad. So I'm thankful that she was old enough to see it for herself. But Angie, to your point, I've always told my kids, even 2, 3, 4 years ago, I'm like, look, I'll support whatever you want the relationship with your mom to be like. But, just recognize you're going to get a different version. And they saw that early on with a couple of their brief visits with them, with her. And so, yeah, they've had to make some very difficult decisions. My daughter had to make an adult decision at 17 to grab her stuff and get out of mom's with the help
Well,
of a
it also
friend.
equips them with the ability to create those boundaries if need be, or to walk away if need be.
Yep.
And that's the gift. Again, I go back to that gift of you being there and being the target.
Mm-hmm.
It
Wow.
allowed your children to be grown before they had to make that decision.
Wow.
Because an 8-year-old daughter would have fallen under your ex-wife's spell a lot easier than a 17-year-old daughter.
Yep. Yeah, I'm grateful for so much, really. And your guys' perspective has been it's been eye-opening. The whole father combo, that's been real interesting.
Yeah.
And I quite frankly, never considered that maybe somehow she played a role in whatever happened with them, because I wasn't there.
I feel like your behavior doesn't happen in a vacuum. You're never just one way in one. She's not just fucking psycho with you. That's where I'm at. Like, she's psycho on all levels, everywhere.
Everyone.
You just happened to be the primary target and focus
when you were the
at
target.
that moment. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it was happening in other places. Just what it looked like, I don't know, because she was really good at manipulating, just like she manipulated your daughter into thinking you were the problem. She manipulated you into thinking her dad was the problem.
Yeah, God help whoever she may have her hands on now. Oh, God help. I mean, that's all I can say.
I hope she's not around children. That's all I have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't know, but I don't think so. I don't think so. But who knows?
And it's so hard too. Those personality disorders, man, are really hard.
They're hard
to get diagnosed.
And from what I've read, well, first of all, the legal system knows nothing about it, judges and whatever. And I'm not sure that the therapists are well versed. Her therapist certainly wasn't well versed in it. But just like, when we did go to therapy as couples when we were trying to hold things together, but as you know what happened, if somebody didn't support her narrative, it's like, we're not going back there. We're not going to see that therapist.
Borderline.
Yeah.
And then you can't and then as the therapist, that's the thing that's hard, and Jamie can probably speak better to this, but that's the thing that's the hardest is, so as a therapist, I have to toe a line, because if I piss you off too much and call you out on things, you leave. Right. So then I'm not involved anymore, right? You make the decision. And so then you get to start over. And so it's really impossible to get that diagnosis, because I can't creepily just continue following you.
Yeah. But the thing that bothers me, I mean, there's a lot of things that bother me, but one of the things that bothered me is her OBGYN who testified said in the hallway of the courtroom to my attorney, I wasn't there. I wasn't present when he said, I've known she's been crazy for years. Okay. So then we had her two attorneys that kicked her to the curb after representing her 20 months. And of course, another attorney will pick up the checkbook and take that payment.
Yep.
But my daughter's therapist, when she moved back in with me, I got her in with a wonderful therapist who was across the hall from my therapist. I saw how teens and families embraced this woman, got her in there. She had some real concerns about what my daughter was telling her about my now ex-wife. She went to her new third attorney. Point is, nobody did shit. I went to the deacon. I was meeting with the deacon at the church talking about my concern about her drug addiction and this and that and so forth, so on. And he would later kick me to the curb because she would weasel her way back in. And I reached out to reconnect with him and be like, well, if this was for reunification therapy, I could meet with you, but it's not at this point. So I can't see you. And I'm like, that's fine. I said, she has her own church she's going to now, but perhaps you'll be God's vehicle to get her the help that she needs. But nobody did anything. Nobody wants to touch it.
No, because they can't handle the truth. And it's also in their defense, the system is set up to not support the truth. The system doesn't want the truth, right? The system wants to keep people down because then you have people that are in need of the system. And who makes money off of that, right? You can always just follow the money. Don't get me on this.
I'm right there with you.
Rabbit train.
With you. I'm right there with you. Keep you sedated, and let's keep that revolving door going. Yeah,
because
I'm right there with you.
The truth is also very difficult because the problem that you run into with folks like your ex-wife is she's good at the game, and when you know how to play each person, when you know what to say here, what not to say here, then no one really has anything but intuition, inclination, something that's like, I just know something's off, but I can't put my finger on it. And it's none of these people are communicating. And so nobody can really pinpoint what's going on. So then nobody has the truth officially. Yeah. And then here you are speaking your truth, and it doesn't matter because, you're the one that is actually telling what's honest. And so then they're like, oh, well, you might be the problem.
Of course I am. Of course I am.
I'm proud of you, though. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
Not only did you get out of it, but you're talking about it. And that saves lives. I mean, it really does. Somebody's going to stumble upon your book, stumble upon this podcast that's like, wait a minute, that sounds a lot like the situation I'm in. And then they're going to be like, nope, I will not marry you, Candy, Crystal, Veronica, whatever your name is.
It's funny. I laugh because I did use Candy, Crystal, and what was the other one?
Yeah.
Oh, man, Candy, Crystal. I couldn't get there with Cinnamon because I was laughing as I'm typing Cinnamon. I'm like, I can't get there.
Barbie.
Tiffany, Candy, Crystal, and Tiffany.
Yeah, you said you used the stripper name. Sorry to anybody name that because I know wonderful women who are named that.
Absolutely. I had a sense of humor when I wrote the book. So
you should have named them all like Ethel, Dorcas, and Gertrude.
Right. There's an inside joke behind some of the names that I picked. But I will tell you, the subtitle, "My Dance with the Devil," is not a joke. I struggled with using that, but I struggled with the fact that was I really married to somebody that evil, and is the devil real? And I know the answers to those now are yes and yes, without a doubt.
Well, and the devil is, I think so often the church says the devil is outside of us, like this evil entity that's trying to do us harm. But I truly believe, just like heaven we're already in heaven. It's already all around us. It's love everywhere. The devil's inside of us and inside of others. It's that convincing us that we are unworthy, or convincing us that we're crazy, or convincing us that our well-meaning choices or our trust in others is the mistake. You trusted her, you believed her. And she played on that, and that's what the devil would do, right? And then what happens? You go inside and you think, "Oh, I shouldn't trust people. oh, perfect, the devil just won, right?
Right.
Because now you're like, I have to. Now there's a difference between being cautious and being like, I can't trust anyone.
Right.
But anyway,
And with that being said, I will tell you that, I've been in a fantastic relationship for the last 3.5 to 4 years. So it's long distance, but I lived real close to, I was introduced to this fantastic woman through a longtime trusted friend. And 6 months into the relationship, when the book came out and I'm like, I'm moving. So I moved 4.5 hours away, but I'm like, I have to do this for me. So for once in my life, I was selfish and said, I got to do this for me. And she supported it, and it's been working out fantastic. So, yeah.
Good.
That's amazing.
That is so exciting.
Yeah. So I've learned to trust again and open up, but it's been just it's a breath of fresh air. But so it's been great.
Good.
You mentioned you used your retirement. You wouldn't have retired had you stayed in that relationship anyway.
I'd probably be dead.
Yeah. I mean, seriously. And then she'd be living off of your benefit and moving on to the next victim,
Yeah. Can you say that one more time? Let me hear that one more time.
She'd be living off of your...
No, I wouldn't be living off my retirement. My retirement wouldn't matter.
Exactly. You'd be gone. And then she'd be moving off of the next victim and telling the story of what an asshole you were and just replaying that again and again and again.
We need to do this podcast with you every week. And then you can send me a bill for the therapy. Because that's the other red flag, is that she out of the blue came to me and started asking about life insurance. She never took an interest in finances, life insurance and finances and IRAs and retirement. I'm like, why are you asking about this? Well, my therapist said I have a right to know. I'm like, well, you sure do. And so I laid it all out for her,
Right. Well, and again, how smart is it to say therapist?
Yeah, it was a therapist, but it was a therapist. I don't mean to cut you off. A therapist who I said, I'd be happy to go meet with your therapist with you, because allegedly her therapist was suggesting I'm cheating on her and she should see my emails and all that stuff. Well, as it turns out, this therapist supposedly decided to stay home and raise her kids and was no longer practicing anymore. But once I dug into the medical claims and the pharmacy claims, I'm like, you only saw this therapist 5 times. You only saw her 5 times. She probably kicked you to the curb because you wanted medications. She was a nurse practitioner / whatever. She could write meds, but I'm like, that's what happened here.
I had somebody use my name saying that they had seen me for substance abuse therapy for a long time and wrote a whole note saying that they were good, they were clear. I was like, the fuck? And so it is a common thing, because if I say my therapist said this, then you have to assume as a trusting empath that it is in my best interest to know this information because a professional is telling me, right? But it's hard. It's hard. It's hard when you have an unreliable narrator, which is what I grew up with, and it's like, you want to believe them. I always say all the time, I want to believe my mom when she says that she's being mistreated, but it's also really difficult when she says that everyone's stealing her underwear at the psych unit that she's at because they want it, and that I can't come visit her because I'm too beautiful and it will make them go insane, which obviously I believe that one. So
that one's dead on.
Yeah,
for
that was
sure.
No, but you're fucking doing it, JD, and that's huge. And you're here and you're telling the story, and that's amazing. I am curious, really quick. You did say something about 2 nonprofits that you're supporting. I would like to shout out to them. What are?
Well, the list is growing, but the 2 main ones that I started with, and so that's why. I mean, I wrote the book. I was encouraged by my female. I wrote the book for a lot of reasons, but I was encouraged by my female therapist because she's like, "Look, when you're all done with this madness, you need to write a book, because there's very few, if any, books out there about men on the other side of the equation."
Yes.
So I decided that, I've been on a mission to promote it for the last 2 to 3 years, is because I'm supporting I've supported a nonprofit called the Mercy Center for Women out of Erie, Pennsylvania. It was near and dear to my mom. It's for women who've been in abusive relationships or women who have been drug addicts, and it's a place for them and their kids to go. And they've just, turned an old elementary school into like 15 or 16 apartments for these women to get back on their feet and to, get clean or to get out of abusive relationships and have a safe place to go. And then there's another one called the First Lieutenant Austin Schilling. Austin Schilling was the son of a good friend of mine. He was decorated military, came home, took his own life stateside at 26. And he's created an endowment fund for him at Appalachian State in North Carolina. It's an ROTC scholarship, so I've supported that. But there's been a laundry list of other charitable organizations that I've provided some proceeds to. But I mean, that's what I'm looking to do is to be able to give back and to turn evil into good for others, really.
Amen. That's beautiful. Jamie, do you have any other? I want to be respectful of your time and obviously our audience's time, but I mean, I feel like I could just sit here and talk to you for 4 hours. Like
this has been phenomenal, and the insight that you and I meant that in my email. I was really looking forward to chatting with both of you because to get a therapist perspective on this, a good therapist, a competent therapist perspective on this. So it's been.
Did you hear that, audience? Competent therapist.
He thinks we're competent.
Well, the line,
we're doing it.
the line is very thin between competence and incompetence, but you're on the right side of it right now.
You're not wrong. It is, and unfortunately, as therapists and licensed social workers, it can be really frustrating when even we interact with folks who are just not doing a good job. And I'm like, oh my God, you're impacting lives. Stop doing what you're doing.
But at the same time, I recognize the burnout and the grind and the understaffing and all the issues that you guys face every day. So thank you for what you do. But
thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Jamie, what do you got? I keep asking you and then I talk.
You're good. No, I just want to repeat for listeners. So it's JD McCabe, and the book is The Third Gift: A Dance with the Devil and Her Mother.
yeah, it is.
Visual aids. You just want to make sure that people are aware. JD, where can people find you also on all the socials and internet?
Thank you very much. And again, ladies, thank you for this wonderful opportunity. So I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all of those threads, the new threads on TikTok or on Instagram rather. It's at The Third Gift. So at The Third Gift. If folks are interested in signed copies, I do signed copies for a flat rate of $25. Mail them out to you. They can just Venmo me at The Third Gift. But it's available through Amazon, Walmart, Target, Barnes & Noble, all the major online retailers. And there's also an audiobook available that I narrated from the closet in my home here on my phone. And again, we're doing this on a shoestring budget here. So I create a little business around it. I know you guys have dealt with my publicist who I just hired a couple of months ago, but she's fantastic, Hannah. So a little shout out to Hannah with Spellbound Public Relations. And yeah, so we're gonna keep the journey going if we possibly can.
We don't want you to go yet, JD, but we do just want to kind of do our signature sign off. But I just want to thank you for your vulnerability and just your willingness to really dive into the deepest parts of yourself and then share it with the world. Because that's how we protect each other, that communication and that willingness to guide others through our stories is near and dear to my heart, obviously. But it's life-changing. And I can't wait to see whose lives are changed through this. So thank you for this opportunity to be here with you. And listeners, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Please share JD's story, get it out there so that other people can realize the dangerous situations that they are finding themselves in and can be wiser and more prepared on what to do before it's too late. So Don't forget to let us know if you have any questions, comments, and we love you so much and are so grateful. So bye.
Bye. Thank you.
If you think we're cool,
Or even if you don't,
please like or subscribe so you'll stay up to date on all things The Shrink Show.
thank you for choosing to spend a portion of your life with us. And remember, don't take yourself too seriously. Life is all a giant shrink show.
A Huda Media Production.
Side effects of listening to this podcast may include side aches or snorting from laughter, impromptu jazz hands, nodding in agreement even though you might be listening alone, an occasional "you said it, girl," and mild cases of existential dread. This podcast is strictly for entertainment and informative purposes only and is not intended or implied to diagnose, treat, or otherwise substitute for professional mental health, medical, legal, or other advice. Thank you. Unicorn says bye.